This exciting topic has been looked at by Delta for more than a year now. We have been talking to the industry a lot, and we are very excited to present some of our first findings from the space. This webinar will be around 45 minutes long. Myself, Arthur Joannick, Senior Analyst at Delta, will be presenting it alongside John Slow and Sue Fernell. This webinar will be recorded, so this will be made available on YouTube afterwards. We will email you the link of the webinar so that you can watch it again, share it with colleagues. And if you want, you can email us to ask for a copy of the presentation. If you have any question during the webinar, feel free to either use the software that's made available to you. There is a question button available. Or you can also raise your hand, and if we spot that, we will allow you to speak and ask your question directly. And if we don't have time to allow you to speak or to answer your question, we will get back to you anyway after the webinar. So just to introduce you to our team first, at Delta we have a team of 5 people on what we call the digital area, which works on connected home and now also on customer data analytics. So there is myself, Arthur, on the top left corner, and there is John Slow, Director of Delta. Hi John, are you here?
Yeah, hello everyone, nice to be talking with you.
There is Sue Fernell on the bottom left, who is a Delta E Associate. Sue, are you here as well?
Hello everybody, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. And the 2 analysts completing the team are Matthew Kaola and Maria Sinodi, who are working full-time on every digital aspect of the work we do at Delta. So you have our contact details. If you have any question, email us or call us. We are available at any time and really happy to have chats with you about this space. So before we get started into the proper webinar, we would like to ask you a question. So we have access to your names and your companies, but we would like to share with you who actually is on this webinar. So you should see a poll on your screen, and if you just click on the type of company you are working for, that will allow us to share with everyone what's the ratio of people interested in this space. And already lots of people answering. So it's not as close as the referendum here in the UK, but we can see lots of utilities already. So let's give it another 10 seconds or so to allow everyone to answer. And okay, so I will just close the poll now, and I should be able to share the results with you. So yeah, as you can see, around 22% of utilities, some heating appliance manufacturers, some control manufacturers, some data analytics specialists, and almost half of the companies defined as other. So that would be actually really interesting to hear from you where you think you fit within this environment, and again, the kind of company working for. We are really interested to hear more about this. So moving on about the agenda of today's webinar, we will start with a short introduction to Delta E for those who don't know us. So most of you will probably know us already, but it's always useful to do that again and introduce a bit what we will focus this webinar on. We will talk about customer data analytics within the energy sector. How does it fit within the energy transformation and the digitalization of things? Third, we will talk about how the energy industry is engaging with data analytics. We are running a utility survey across Europe, and we will present some of the early findings of that. 4, we will talk about our first big report within the customer data analytics research, which is about cross-selling and upselling using customer data analytics. And finally, we will just give you a bit more information on what we will provide at Delta about data analytics, and some more information about how to contact us and get views on the research. And again, it should be around 45 minutes long. We know you are quite busy, so we'll try to keep it to that time. So John, I will hand over to you for introducing Delta.
Thanks, Arthur. So this diagram will be familiar to some of you who know delta well. It basically shows that, taking the electricity value chain as an example, our focus is at the customer end of that. And our mission at Delta is to help companies navigate what we believe will be a transformation of the energy system. A transformation away from a central power plant commodity business to a distributed, service-orientated, and much more customer-centric business. So, Arthur, if you click to bring up the boxes, we work with primarily two groups of companies, energy companies and what we broadly call manufacturers, encompasses a lot of different types of companies, and an increasing range of other companies, including software companies, insurance companies, who are interested to get a stake in this transformation of the energy system. So that gives you a brief introduction to Delta, and in terms of what we offer, we split our work into, on the left-hand side, subscription-based research services, and on the right-hand side, consultancy, which is one-to-one work, and summits, where we organise invitation-only roundtables, workshops, meetings on particular topics. Now, this is a diagram we've been spending a bit of time developing, and I'd say it's still work in progress to some degree. I'll use it just to explain why we believe data analytics is going to be such an important topic in the next years in this transformation of the energy system. If you look at the middle three boxes of generation, trading, and retail, these show the traditional energy value chain. And what you can see is nibbles being taken out of this value chain by things such as photovoltaics, demand response, in the future storage. Now, this is causing some challenges for utilities, for the incumbent companies who have these nibbles being taken out of their value chain. So they are increasingly interested in developing revenue and profits from services, which is shown in the orange triangle on the right. So they're moving in that right-hand direction. But at the same time, manufacturers and telcos and other companies are increasingly active in this services business and may even move to the left and try and get more of the relationship with the customer, potentially threatening the utilities relationships. So what we see is this battleground around services, the types of services that are shown in the orange triangle. And we believe that the winners in this battle will increasingly be able to use data and analytics and insight from data to help build powerful relationships with customers, to build fantastic insight into their customers, and to work out exactly what they can sell to customers, in what way, through what channels, with what messages, and at what time. So data analytics is one of the key factors that will be absolutely critical in who wins this battleground in the future. And that's why, as Arthur said, over the last years, we've been focusing on it more and more, and now very excited to be launching this new research service.
So moving on to the customer data analytics and the energy sector, when we speak to companies about what we want to achieve within the data analytics space, we often get questions such as, oh, okay, so what kind of analytics do you do, or how do you implement such thing? How do you store the data? How do you capture the data? And those are the sort of things on the left-hand side that we don't do, actually. There are lots of companies already doing this, hundreds of them. What we actually focus on is more on how data analytics can be used to generate the value and explaining really who is doing what's happening in this market, what type of lessons we can learn from other industries such as telcos, for example. And our role is to primarily help you simplify your thinking through that market by cutting through the complexity, by adding structure, frameworks, and diving into key areas of data analytics that we think will bring value to your business. So when we have been speaking to companies for a number of years, we have had specific questions such as how can we use data analytics to better manage acquisition and churn, or well, we get all this data from smart meters, from connected devices, etc. But what do we do with that? How do we organize ourselves? I think, John, you have particular examples of companies who have asked very interesting questions and that help us shape our thinking about this.
Yes, so for example, one company said, oh, we know lots about data analytics. We see vendor after vendor every week. And then when I probed a bit further and said, okay, well, do you have a clear view on what your strategy should be, on how you can best use analytics to create value? Their answer is, well, the vendors can't really help us with that. They tell us what they can do, but we struggle a bit to work out how we can create value. Or on the bottom right box, some still unclear thinking on what the real value you can create from data analytics. Happier customers, selling more, or cutting costs, or perhaps all of those three. So the more we listen to the market, the more we sense where some of the challenges are for utilities, for product manufacturers, for controls companies, in creating value from data today and the huge volumes of data that are coming in the next years.
Thanks, John. So we developed a framework to better structure our thinking around data analytics, and these are the sort of companies John explained it applies to, and we grouped all their questions into 4 categories of questions. The first one being on the top, what value can be generated from customer data analytics? What separates basic from best practices in terms of company organization? What are the implementation choices in terms of vendors of data analytics? And finally, what types of data can be used? How can we generate it? Where can we find it, etc. So in terms of what value can be generated, Sue, if you can tell us one key comment about each of these values.
Sure. They all basically fall into 3 categories: improving revenue, reducing costs, or satisfying customers, either by better serving their needs or responding faster or getting it right first time.
Thanks. And the next thing is about what kind of data input do we get. There are lots of data such as customer characteristics and customer behavior and preferences. Sue, what is your key takeaway from looking at the data that companies can use to generate value?
I think the key takeaway is that customers already have more data than they realize they could use. So much of the data is sitting in the operations system. If it can be combined with other data, is already incredibly useful. The second thing is they can buy in more data than they realize. They can improve existing holes in the data they've got. They can buy in building data. They can buy in incredibly detailed weather data. They can buy in segmentation data, and then the art is being able to combine it.
Great, and obviously that leads to how different companies are organized to do data analytics from basic to actually best practices. So do you have a view on the differences between basic and best practice in the industry?
Yes, I think it actually is a very large difference. We see the best practice companies being driven down from the board, often a board sponsor. So the entire organization structure is different in the best practice company. You have pockets of data experts throughout the company who are coordinated and work together and exchange ideas and views and learnings. Sometimes they're collaborating with outside units like research universities as well. Typically, when models get created in best practice companies, they're developed in a place where they can be iterated easily and updated by any data analyst. Usually, the data from within the organization that is often hidden from organizations, as I was saying earlier, It can be bought, but in a good practice organization, it's brought together in an enterprise architecture where all the data can be used, and where future data that gets added can also be used to improve the model. So there's quite a lot of differences, and the continuous improvement is a big one. Those that are good at doing that.
Yeah, and finally, the key questions that people are asking is what kind of companies or internal resources we can use to do this analytics. Again, as you saw, there are lots of different types of vendors of data analytics in that space.
Absolutely, and the choice is complex, because not only are there many vendors, but actually each of the big vendors like IBM typically offer a portfolio of solution across most of the questions. So even within a single vendor, you might find variations in all of these solutions. I think some of the big questions are how much do we want to outsource? And if we want to outsource, do we want to outsource it to the cloud or just to somebody doing it from their site? The type of database is important. The more real time you want to process in, and the more data you've got, the more you need to go to solutions, for example, in memory databases. The underlying database tools, as to whether they stretch with tentacles across the whole organization and can leverage all of your data, or whether they're just working in a silo, is an important decision. And sometimes the answer is you have to start in one place for your first project or two, even though you know where you want to get to at the end state. Sometimes you can't just wave a wand and get to the end state. So it's okay that some of the early solutions might perhaps be siloed or be smaller, narrower solutions. And then the other question is how you handle unstructured data. There's a goldmine of data in the speech calls to the call center agents, or in the text transcripts of call agent calls, and in social media data. And traditional data analytics doesn't process that. But increasingly today, best practice companies are able to tell the sentiment of somebody on a call, and perhaps route that call or know what the right thing to say to that customer is in real time, prompted by the system, because they can get the sentiment out of the voice call. That requires different kinds of analytics, all of which is available.
Thank you, Sue. And we talk about the values that can be generated from the data analytics. So we would like to ask you, for your organization, how do you think data analytics can create the most value? And again, we'll ask you to just answer one of these 4 or 5 choices, just to understand really how important that is, and which areas of the business it will help develop, from cutting costs, selling more, or cross-selling different services, different bundles, make customers happier and obviously stickier, so that you actually retain customers. Or is it actually more strategic developments and decision-making through the organization? So again, data analytics can be used in a very big number of ways, but which ones will be the ones that favor your organization? So I'll just give you 5 more seconds to answer that question. We already have some good trends towards the strategic developments and decision-making. So I'll just close the poll for now and share the results with you. So yeah, as I said, almost half of the people answering the question say that strategic developments for the company using data analytics is key. And second, obviously, making customers happier will be key to keep them, and obviously selling more in the future. Surprisingly, actually, cutting costs and selling more is not on top of the priorities, but very interesting results. So I will hide this for now and go on with the next parts of what we did recently and what we are doing with customer data analytics to compare with these results. So we are currently doing a survey trying to understand how utilities engage with customer data analytics. And we are aiming for 20 utilities in Europe and some other parts of the world to answer a series of questions such as the ones highlighted here. For example, what do you believe are the biggest challenges for your organization exploiting the opportunity from data analytics, or who do you partner with for doing so? So we will share some of the results with you in a second, but if you are interested in participating and haven't done so yet, let us know, email us, and we will send you a copy of the the questionnaire, and as a result we will give you the anonymized results back once the survey is completed. We plan to extend this to other types of companies, not only utilities, but we have seen interest from heating appliance manufacturers, control manufacturers. So again, we will expand this sort of survey to understand what others are doing, how my organization fits within the industry, and this sort of things. So some of the early findings from our survey. So obviously it's not completed yet, but the first results are as follows. So the first graph on the top left shows to the question, does your retail business have coordinated, robust strategy for data analytics? In green, the main answer, the most common answer was it's being developed, but near completion, so not there yet. And one of the key findings is the dark blue is that everything is all coordinated, robust for data analytics. So again, the industry is not there yet. Some more innovators are already there, but most of the industry is lagging behind. Second question is, how important is data analytics for your retail business strategy? And the key answer, the main answer was it's one of the top 3 or to 5 key priorities for our retail business, which is not surprising given that the big data is such a great topic at the moment. So yeah, those are the early findings from the survey. And finally, when we ask what is driving your engagement with data analytics, differently from the poll results, the main answer was acquisition and retention of customers. So while we had strategic development and decision making in our poll, customers retention is key. The second one was again customer engagement, improve the net promoter score, followed by improve the business decision making and generate new revenue from services. So again, if you want to participate and help us grow the number of companies we survey, please feel free to contact us. So for the next part, I will hand over to my colleagues John and Sue, who are the main people working on our first report called Cross-Sell and Upsell.
Thanks, Arthur. I think I inadvertently sent a message to my fellow colleagues, to all participants. I may have done saying we're a few minutes behind schedule. Arthur's done a good job in catching up, so apologies for sending that to everyone. And we will skip through this quite quickly, but pull out some of the key insights that we're finding about how data analytics can be used for cross-sell and upsell. To start with, a very quick definition of upsell and cross-sell. You can see in the purple box and the blue box what it is. I won't describe it. It's fairly straightforward. And on the right-hand side, if we bring up the next box, you can see some of the benefits of cross-sell and upsell. So, Arthur, if you could click on to bring up the green box. Here, the benefits are across all the different value drivers that we talked about earlier, actually. So it's not just about new revenue. It can help retention, help to lead to happier customers, and data analytics can help you cut costs as well. Moving on to the next slide, some people wonder how much can a utility cross-sell or upsell. Sue, do you want to say a few comments about the range of possibilities that this diagram shows?
Yes, I mean, as you can see, there's a lot of stuff on the circle, and there's a lot of categories like insurance and connected home and finance and multi-utility and heating. And we have found utilities in most of these type categories like finance or multi-utilities, and we found them represented in most types of products all over these circles. So there are actually a great many things that a utility could do to cross-sell.
And before you get too worried about, well, would my utility ever want to get into selling consumables or financing or telcos, we'll look in a slide about how you might do that. Also, we're not just talking about utilities, but this slide could be drawn for appliance manufacturers or different other types of companies. And the benefits can be quite transformational. If we move to the next slide. Margins, again, taking utilities as a case study, margins in utilities are pretty thin in most countries. We've written here 20 to 50 euros as being often the range, less than 5% margin. And so this diagram shows how you can actually make substantial increases in that, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. The reason is what's going on is that the incremental revenue and or commission that you're making together with the churn benefits typically are falling to the bottom line, or largely falling to the bottom line. And British Gas is a very good illustration of this. 19% of its total post-tax profit in retail comes from services, and that represents a whole half a percentage point of total profit. In some industries that doesn't sound very much, but in the energy industry, where for many utilities margins are actually somewhere in the range of 2 to 5%, having an extra half percentage point is transformational to the shareholder results. And so this can be a very, very powerful tool if it's driven from a strategy from the board down, as it is in British Gas.
Now, some of the objections we hear to this are, well, my utility or my company isn't British Gas. We don't have several thousand engineers in vans being able to cover households across the country. If we move to the next slide, then we can actually show how cross-sell and upsell doesn't have to require hundreds or thousands of installers as a field service force. Sue, do you want to talk through the key points on this diagram?
Yes, and I think that this is really a key to unlocking this in strategy in the utility. At its crudest, you could just sell data records. Somebody will pay for, you know, 8 pence a lead or 8 euro cents a lead just to know that a home has a reasonable propensity of not being that efficient. If you actually manage to qualify it so the customer says that they might be willing to take a call, that might go up to 4 euros, and that's completely hands-off. Moving to the next stage, you could set up a product library and sell products through other retailers. So you wouldn't actually be an e-commerce store, you would be channeling people to something. And it could be any of the products in the whole Amazon store or in any retailer that you sign up to do this with. And you would provide what looks to the customer like just a click-through link for a product, but in fact has because you have a relationship with a retailer and you've signed up to do this, this becomes called an affiliate link, and the commission is tracked back to you. So if they then purchase something through the retailer, you would get that commission. Clearly, you'd have to do it in enough scale to make it worth it, but you get raw commission, and you haven't got to do any inventory or aftercare or anything like that. Moving down, it starts to become very interesting if you can engage a customer on a journey, persuade them that they need a product, and persuade them to actually take an appointment for something. Now, as we're going to see in the case studies, utilities actually have data between the smart meter data and temperature data that they may have from a thermostat to actually be able to predict the insulation properties or draft-proofing properties of a building, and to make some quite good recommendations and estimates of savings if the user made some changes to their home. And if as a result of the ongoing engagement journey that utilities are trying to have, they're able to get the advice to land as interesting to the customer and to get the customer to actually accept an appointment, which could be with a third party, then those third parties would pay up to 150 euros per appointment. I talked to a double glazing company in the UK, and that's what they would pay to actually have an appointment booked on their behalf. And then there again, you can make it hands-off at that point. So you can monetize leads at quite a high level without actually doing that much more than what you're doing with your engagement engine. And then, of course, you can move further up the chain and do a bilateral partnership deal with more value. Or, of course, you could do what British Gas does and service the lead yourself all the way through. And I think one of the things that you could start earlier in the table, you could start with affiliate links, or and then as you start to prove that there is market interest and you are able to drive customer interest in this, then you can get buy-in from your organization to move to higher profit verticals, so moving from 1 through 2 down to 6 over time.
Thanks, Sue. On the next slide here, now we've unearthed many tens of examples of how data analytics is being used to better cross-sell and upsell. And this shows our spectrum it's not quite a continuum. You can enter this at different places, and on the left-hand side it can be complex as well as simple. But this is our framework for the different ways in which you can use data analytics to better cross-sell and upsell. What we'll do is we'll very briefly talk you through this, keeping an eye on time, and then show you spend a couple of minutes on 3 case studies to illustrate this a bit further. So, Sue, can you maybe just talk in a very basic way about simple campaign ROI? What are we talking about there?
Yes, absolutely. So the art of a campaign is to spend as little as possible to get as many responses as possible, and by using data analytics, you can predict the people that you should target, and you can see where the optimum point is to stop targeting customers based on where you think that the cost is going to exceed the likelihood that they will respond. And so, but by this method, you can maybe improve 10, 20, 30% of the return on investment on your campaigns that you do to cross-sell something.
And then if you move up to tailoring, so number 2, there are 2 benefits here. One is you may drive uptake just by the process of tailoring, so giving customer, rather than a generic, you will save on average £300 or €300 a year, you will save 380. Tailoring can result in happier customers. The tailoring itself drives uptake, and the tailoring can avoid making promises that aren't then fulfilled to customers. Sue, do you want to say 1 or 2 things briefly about one of the right-hand areas, or middle or right-hand areas?
Yeah, sure. So the marketplace, for example, that is about both aggregating people who can do things for you, so perhaps a marketplace of efficiency installers, because we know that providing efficiency solutions covers an enormous breadth of capability, and it's difficult for an organization to do it all on their own. But it might also be a marketplace of products. Again, those could be assembled using affiliate links, or it could be your own products, and it can represent many suppliers. So this is an opportunity to cover a lot of the market, both in terms of what you might sell and in terms of who might do work, and to bring consumers to that. And there are lots of clever ways in which utilities can gain the right to play and drive traffic to that marketplace, and that's what the art becomes. It becomes, how do you drive traffic to the marketplace that you create? How do you create something innovative around that? And then just quickly, the last 2 circles. The next thing you can do, up to now what we've been talking about isn't really real time, but circle 4 is talking about what you can do in real time. It's next best action, whether that is the campaign system for sending out email offers, or whether it's the call center saying, I know that this is a pissed off customer and they call 3 times to complain about something. It is not right to try and promote them a product, it's right to try and save them as a customer next. Or conversely, we can see that they were clicking on the website for a new boiler yesterday, and they were inquiring about boiler cover for an old boiler last week, and they've just called the call center. Maybe we should try and sell them a new boiler or a cover policy, regardless of what the point of the call is. So this allows you to do things in real time. Some companies are also looking at pricing in real time. And then finally, bundles. Bundles can be done incredibly simply. You can just say, well, let's just bundle telecoms and energy and give 5% off. Or you can do what some companies like cable companies do, which is a colossal, Herculean amount of data analytics to optimize the right TV channels and things in a bundle with the right messages for customers, and across all the possibilities. They're optimizing it for every individual company, and then looking at the optimization for each customer and re-optimizing that across the whole base. And that is some of the biggest data analytics going on. It's huge, so that can be done in a very sophisticated way.
Thanks, Sue. Moving on to the next slide, you can see some of the ways we break this down even further. So some different ways that simple campaign return on investment, simple ways that you can use data analytics to drive that. We won't go through this now for the sake of time. On the next slide, so the circle is again setting out our framework or our spectrum of how data analytics can be used. We'll spend a minute or two on 3 case studies, and we'll whiz through these to make sure we keep to time. So the first one is a utility, a European utility, wanting to get greater uptake of their offer of new heating systems to customers. And they worked with a Swiss-based specialist energy analytics firm, Ben Energy. What you can see on the right here, and we won't read through this all, is a description of how Ben Energy went about this work. So taking different variables, feeding it into a statistical model, using algorithms to look through correlations. We go to the next slide. Then, Sue, do you want to say just a couple of words about 1 or 2 of these correlations that they picked out?
Yes, and I want to say that first of all they gave a whole load of random variables, but the second is that they had some expertise in this, so they also worked out some composite variables that they wanted to feed it, I think. So they guessed that owners were more likely to have a newer heating system, so ownership was definitely one of the variables that went in. They also guessed, interestingly, that poor boilers, old boilers, result in energy degrading over time, so people using more energy over time. So there was a composite variable that went into this that was the change in energy over time. And I think one of the things I want to bring out is that data analytics is an art, not just a science. And whilst you can feed completely random variables into a model and you can get a model out, if you also have some hypotheses, you might end up creating some additional composite variables. And that might help you develop a better model. And then they also thought that, or it transpired later on when they'd also fed random variables into the model, but there was a correlation in geographic areas that there were clusters of old boilers near each other, that if 2 similar homes had very different energy profiles, it meant that there was a slightly higher probability that the one with the higher energy might have an older boiler. And again, the model isn't looking at each one of these. In the end, it's creating a composite prediction based on all of these variables that go in.
Thanks, Sue. So on the next slide here, very simply, you can see this graph shows the optimum number of customers that should be targeted to get the best return on investment on the campaign.
And it prioritized. It also prioritized the customers from the highest probability of responding to the campaign to the lowest. So if it concluded that you wanted to address 600,000, you would then address the first 600,000 that had the highest, starting with the highest predicted score of response.
Thanks, Sue. And on the next chart here, you can read this. If you would like to read this and learn more, then please request a copy of the slides. But you can see it was much more accurate than the utility's own model and increased profitability of campaigns. So the next case study is about both campaign ROI and tailored business quotes. So if we flip forward 1 slide. So Duke Energy in the US was struggling to get customers to take smart thermostats, and they asked Tendril, a US-based energy analytics company, to help. And in summary, through Tendril's analytics, there was a 4 times increase in take-up using both utility data, third-party data, and personalizing the message. If we move on to the next slide, then on the right-hand side, you can see the range of data sets that Tendril looked at. And there's some quite funny ones there if you look closely. So, for example, one of them is pet ownership. And you might think, what on earth has that got to do with smart thermostats? Well, interestingly, if you live in the US and you own a dog compared to owning a cat, you're twice as likely to buy a photovoltaic system. So dog owners are twice as likely as cat owners to buy photovoltaic systems. Don't ask me about the causality of that, but what that means is if you look at who's buying pet food or whether someone's buying dog food, then you get a good indicator to propensity to buy. So Tendril used a huge number of variables to try and define the propensity to buy, and that gave them 3 segments that you can see at the bottom slide on the left. or customers likely to buy smart thermostats, and there was a fourth segment of customers that are unlikely to buy, and those weren't targeted. And if we go to the next slide, then using building physics models, so third-party housing data and analytics off the back of that, what they were able to do is offer personalized messages. So they were able to tailor the message to the type of customer and also tailor the savings. So at the bottom right, you can see that for this customer, the offer was to save them $132. Of course, you've got to be careful contractually about what you say, but that personalization, the segmentation, drove much higher uptake than the utility was able to do before. Okay. Now, Sue, do you think we should leave the last case study, or do you think you can describe it in just 1 minute?
I think I can describe it in just 1 minute.
Okay, you've got 1 minute.
Okay, so energy mission is to help customers buy the most energy efficient products. Someone's speaking. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Sue. Carry on.
So NAV set up a marketplace of tons and tons of white goods and consumer electronics products. They set them up with affiliate links through many retailers, from Amazon to high street retailers, so that they could find the cheapest price for the customer, and if the customer clicked, they would get affiliate commission. And the transformational thing is that they have changed the buying criteria from just price or longevity perhaps of the device to energy efficiency. And they've created an NAV score on energy efficiency for every single appliance from 1 to 100, and they show the customer how much the cost of purchase is in the cheapest store, as well as the cost of the energy, and help the customer navigate the best place to make that purchase. Now, they then offer this on a white label basis to utilities, initially in the States, to help drive up adoption of the rebates, because utilities are able to provide rebates for energy efficiency appliances, and then they get rewarded by the government effectively for doing that. In California, PG&E has 15% of its rebates going through this structure already. In Europe, E.ON's already taken a stake in NAV, and a number of utilities are interested in this model. And it allows the users both to cross-sell, the utilities to both cross-sell from their current engagement model that they might be using on smart meter data, O-Power type models, and it also allows them to go and find other users for a pure sell, where they might be looking on Facebook or Google search for white goods, and it allows the utility to put a branded advert in there and say, have you thought about the energy efficiency? Click here, and that would drive additional traffic to the marketplace. And it enhances the utility's brand in the perception of energy.
Thanks, Lou. We better stop there, but it's an excellent description of a complex but fascinating business model and case study. Arthur, I'll hand back to you now just to wrap up and summarize the last few minutes.
Yeah, thanks, John, and thanks you for this good description. So just to summarize and explain to you a bit more about what we do in the space. So you have you had a good idea from what Sue and John explained, but in general, Delta EE provides insight-driven subscription services, and we want to do exactly the same for data analytics. And the aim is to do actionable, commercially compelling insight and analysis for you, so that you are successful in the space. So most of the research services are multi-client, 12 months of research when you subscribe. You have the opportunity to influence the topics of the research that we do. And for you, it's a really cost-effective way to access a lot of the research on top of having analyst support and regular updates through the year. So just very briefly to explain to you exactly what we do through this service, we, as explained, we will bring a framework to help you structure your thinking in the space between value, between the data, between how to organize yourself. So you can read that later when you get the slides. The next thing we do through a service is a series of case studies where we analyzed what companies tried to achieve, what was their aim, how they did it, what kind of the companies they partnered with, and therefore what were the results out of that using data analytics. Number 3 is what we call our vendor landscape and our vendor profile library, where we analyze all the big names of the vendor data analytics industry and also some of the more specialized company. And again, helping you understand where each of these companies fits into the landscape. Finally, and for the most important part of this service will be what we call the deep dives, the in-depth reports, which cross-sell and upsell was the first part of it. So every quarter or so we'll publish a study which will be 30 to 40 slides long and explain to you again some case studies about how this works, how you can generate value for your company, and really try to understand what's behind all of this. So as I said, subscribers get a chance to influence the next topics, but the future topics are likely to be around customer segmentation or data analytics for customer acquisition and retention. Finally, like every other service that we do at Delta, we provide you support, so either through webinars, through meetings, regular catch-ups on the phone, etc. So really helping you use all the materials that's made available to you. And so the launch of the service will be in July, so next week, and this fits into all the other services you can see on the right-hand side of this, divided between 3 clusters. The customer data analytics fits into the digital innovation range of services, which connects the home and energy service innovation are part of. Because it's a new service, we offer early bird subscriber discounts for the first few months to allow you to get access to the research for a lower price. Then again, you have the opportunity to help shape the research to your needs. And again, there are lots of information, public material that we are publishing, that we have published on our websites. So there will be more webinars, there will be white papers, blogs, etc. that will be available to you. So just to summarize the key 4 messages of this webinar. First, we think that fantastic data analytics will be critical to win the kind of energy battle that we explained on the right-hand side, especially on the energy services marketplace. Second, with the energy sector offers so much possibilities through data analytics. There are so many profit levers that are available and multiple sources of data, which, for example, smart meters allow you to get. It's really about how to generate the value from this, and there are lots of ways that we will describe through that service. About the cross-selling and upselling reports, we identify 5 ways companies use already data analytics to better cross-sell and upsell. And again, this deep dive analyzes exactly how some companies did that, how you can adapt it to your business, and what are the values for that. And finally, our new services will help you succeed in this space, identify opportunities, and explore the value from the data. So we encourage you to speak to us to see if that's something you might be interested in, or even if it's just an informal discussion. We are really happy to get your views, exchange views with you, so that we can better tailor such research to your needs. So finally, thank you everyone for attending this webinar. We are just 1 or 2 minutes over time, so sorry about that, but I hope you found that really useful. As explained earlier, this has been recorded. This will be made available on YouTube. We will share the link with you so that you can share with colleagues and watch it again. If you want a copy of the slides, feel free to send us an email. You can see all the digital team emails here. Feel free to give us a call if you want to have a chat or exchange views. We had a question earlier about the industry survey that we are doing. So this is not only for big utilities. This is for any kind of utility in the market. So again, if you're a smaller utility, feel free to let us know if you want to participate. So again, thank you very much for attending. I hope you found this useful, and I'd like to thank you, John and Sue, for participating from your own offices. If you want to have a final comment.
Just from my side, thanks for inviting us on the call, and it's been interesting to talk to you, and we'd love to hear the thoughts and observations, additional case studies, questions that you'd like to look at. So please do email us with any of those thoughts.
Thanks for joining, everyone. We hope you found it a good use of your time and look forward to speaking with you or communicating with you more about this topic in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and bye-bye.